Hi everyone, welcome back to my travel diary. Now, I just wanted to start off this video by apologizing for not uploading it sooner. With all of the Christmas holidays and everything like that, I decided to change up my schedule a little bit. So I've decided that I'm actually going to start uploading my videos on the Friday rather than Sunday. I just feel like given my schedule, it's going to make it a lot easier for me to manage it that way. Now, I did want to mention just a couple of little things just before I get into this video as well. One of those is that I've decided to not script this video. My previous few videos, they had all actually been virtually fully scripted. I didn't really like the way they turned out. I felt like it was very obvious that they were scripted, and I wanted to change that. I wanted to create a bit more of a flow with the way I'm speaking and everything like that, and I think it is going to be a little bit difficult, but we'll see how we go. I definitely think that it is a better decision than fully scripting everything word for word. Now, the other thing that I did want to mention is this video in particular was a bit of a difficult one to make. Just talking about a few of the things in this video were a little bit difficult. So anyway, let's just jump right into it. So we actually had spent the night at a hotel in Kyoto, and in the morning we had a breakfast, which was like a set breakfast meal at the hotel itself, which included like a mix of things such as rice, tofu, some assorted vegetables, yogurt, juice, some fish, and some tea on the side. Now, this breakfast was really great. I actually love these set breakfast meals. So after we finished having breakfast, we headed to Sagano Bamboo Grove in Kyoto. Now, the Sagano Bamboo Grove is just such a mesmerizing and amazing place, and the streets before you get in there are very classic, like old Japan style looking streets, and they themselves are actually very photogenic in my opinion. Now, the Bamboo Grove is a very touristy and therefore very busy location. It is definitely better to get in there early. We got there relatively early and it was still very much full of people. Now, the very first thing I noticed, even though there was so many people there, as soon as you step foot into the Bamboo Grove, you can really feel the difference in the quality of air. Like, it just feels so much cleaner to breathe, and it's a very hard thing to explain in words, but it's definitely a place that I highly recommend that you go just to experience it. Now, I'd seen some videos on the Sagano Bamboo Grove before actually going there before, and unfortunately when we went it was a very cloudy day, so we didn't get to see much in the way of like the sun breaking through the bamboo grove, but it was still such a beautiful place to be. Now, one other thing that you will see a lot in the Bamboo Grove is there are a lot of spiders in there. Personally, not a big spider person. I do live in Australia, we have a lot of big spiders, but these ones were still quite big. Now, while walking through the grove, there's a lot of little things to see. There's a few shrines. There was even a train that passes through the forest, and that was really cool to see. It sort of reminded me of something that you might see in like a Ghibli film or something like that. Yeah, it was really cool to see that and get a chance to film it as well while I was there. So the train actually had passed by just as we'd gone over the tracks. And within the grove, there's actually these little statues that you can see sort of just sitting about. I don't know too much of the reason why they were there, but it was very cool to see, and again, just gives very much Studio Ghibli vibes just being there. The Sagano Bamboo Grove is definitely one place that I highly recommend that you go, especially if you're a nature lover. Once again, it's just a place that really surprised me with how clean the air felt being there. And it's very surprising how quickly that difference in air was noticed just moving from the streets of Kyoto into the grove. Now, once we left the Sagano Bamboo Grove, it was getting close to lunchtime, so we decided to meet up with another friend at a place called Mogu Mogu in Kyoto. Now, Mogu Mogu actually has a restaurant here in Australia, in Melbourne. The restaurant in Melbourne has very much Japanese-style dishes, whereas the one in Kyoto has the opposite. It's more of an Australian-Japanese fusion cafe. The one in Australia was actually the original one. Then the owners ended up moving back to Japan, where they set up the one in Kyoto as well. So they actually speak very good English there as well. So it'll be extremely easy for you to order anything because they speak perfect English. Now, for the meal that I got when we went to Mogu Mogu, I got kind of like a big breakfast that we would normally have here in Australia. So the one at Mogu Mogu was poached eggs on top of pulled pork with strawberry mochi on the side, like a fried croquette type thing, some roasted eggplant, avocado, and just a couple of other things. And for my drink, I got this really cute Tanuki iced coffee. In fact, one thing that's very difficult to find in Japan is good coffee. Now, Mogu Mogu, if you've ever had coffee in Australia, Mogu Mogu basically has adapted that. They definitely have very, very good coffee there. Highly recommend it. The place itself was actually really well decorated as well, and they even managed to fit in like a really small garden out the back. It's definitely a place I recommend going if you're ever in the area. So after we had lunch at Mogu Mogu, we ended up going to another place that was recommended by the friend that we actually met up with. Because we ended up doing a small little hike around Kyoto as well, but before that we decided to make one little stop. Now, the place that we ended up going to has actually become quite a special place to me personally, and one of the good things about it is it's quite out of the way, which means it doesn't really get many tourists. In fact, when we were there we didn't see any, and being that it was still around lunchtime, I would imagine that pretty much any time of the day would be quite similar. There's a short hike up a little mountain just to get there, but there's quite a few nice little things to see along the way. Now, one thing that you'll see quite a bit on the way up to Tanakidani-san is these tanuki statues, some of which are quite old. You can tell by the amount of moss that's actually growing on them. So the place itself is called Tanakidani-san Fudou-in Temple, which is also located in Kyoto. Now, as soon as you get to the top where the actual temple itself is located, one of the first things we saw when we arrived was actually a man that was performing a small little ceremony on his own, where he was taking the paper and wooden prayers that had been written up by people and burning them in a ceremonial fire. Now, the burning of wishes and prayers in these sacred fires is believed that this act helps send the prayers and wishes to the divine realm. Now, with this temple, it was actually like I was meant to be here. Now, the friend that we met up with, as well as Sari's parents, they didn't actually know about this at the time, but my younger sister's oldest son, earlier this year, he was diagnosed with leukemia when he was 3 years old. He just recently turned 4. But it's definitely been a very difficult time for them. The reason why it made me feel like I was meant to be here is because this particular temple is somewhere that a lot of people hike to in order to basically put out these wooden prayers for kind of like praying for good health in general, but also specifically for that of cancer. So I decided to put one out there for my nephew Bodhi. Now, this really was a truly beautiful temple, and the sights overlooking Kyoto from the top was absolutely amazing. And it's definitely a place that I highly recommend going, especially if you want to go to a place that's a little bit more out of the way and a little bit less crowded as well. Now, I was going to talk a little bit more about my nephew and his diagnosis, but I figured I might do that in another video, possibly. But as of right now, I want to keep this more of like a travel diary and a little bit more upbeat, so I am just going to move on from here to the next location. So afterwards, we walked back to the car to head off to the first destination from where we would be hiking from, and that was Ginkaku-ji, also known as the Silver Pavilion. Now, it's a fairly well-known place for its beautiful garden and architecture, and because of that, it is also quite a busy touristy spot. It is still really a nice place to visit. It doesn't bother me being around big crowds. It does make it a little bit hard when you're trying to film and take photos, but I mean, my main purpose is to see as much as I can, and I still really enjoyed it. Now, like Ginkaku-ji, which is the golden pavilion, which is covered in gold leaf, Ginkaku-ji was also originally intended to be covered in silver leaf, hence the name, the Silver Pavilion. However, the plan was never actually completed. Now again, like some other places around Kyoto, it offers a really good view, especially once you get up to the top of where the garden is. It gives you a really lovely view of the city. Although if you really wanted to get probably the best view that I can think of the view of Kyoto city, I would highly recommend that you go to Arashiyama. We didn't go there this time, but I had been there previously, so I decided to give it a miss this time. But it's really great. You can go out there, feed some monkeys, and get a really good view. It's definitely a really nice place that I highly recommend going as well. Now, just south of Ginkaku-ji, there is a temple known as Hounen-in Temple. Now, it too has a really beautiful garden and architecture to go and see. It seems to also be much less well known. There wasn't really many tourists going to see this particular place, and it is only just a very short walk from Ginkaku-ji. So I highly recommend going to check that out if you want to get a little bit more of a quieter area to walk around and see a really nice temple and garden and everything like that. It really is a hidden gem and a pretty peaceful escape from the rest of the city as well. Hounen-in Temple actually dates back over 800 years. It was actually established back in the 12th century by a monk named Hounen, who was a prominent figure in Buddhism. And similar to where I went earlier at Tanakidani-san Fudou-in Temple, they actually do the burning of the prayers and wishes as well for the same reason, which I did forget to mention before is something that takes place once a year. So they go through and they burn all of the old ones. Now, our hike was set to take us from Ginkaku-ji down to a place called Suirokaku, and along the way there was a path with a waterway running alongside of it, and the path is called Tetsugaku no Michi, or also known as the Philosophers Path in English. Now, walking this path was quite interesting. We actually saw quite a few kids actually fishing in the waterway, because there was quite a few fish actually swimming in there. And also, if you do manage to come during the cherry blossom season, pretty much running most of the way down this path are actually cherry blossom trees, which would be in full bloom. Now, it is a very short window of when you can see them, because they usually only bloom for about a week or so, but it would be a very beautiful sight, and hopefully one day I do get to see it. It would be amazing. Now, you can follow this path much of the way down south, which is actually going back to the beginning of the hiking trail, because there is actually a set trail for hiking around Kyoto with markers and everything like that that you can follow. Now, the set hiking path that we'd set out for today was only going to be roughly 2 kilo, but with all the other locations that we'd already visited and going and seeing a few things here and there off the side of the path, because I was really trying to film as much as possible, My feet and my phone were both getting fairly low on juice at this point. So it was around this point that I had to start limiting just how much I was filming. Now I did have a small battery pack in my bag, but it has kind of a slow charge, so it really didn't help out too much, but it still did allow me to film quite a bit, just enough just to get through the rest of the hike. Now one of the other places we did see more down towards the south end of the hike was a place called Hounen-in Temple. Now this place has some really amazing architecture and gardens again, which is just one of those things that I absolutely love seeing in Japan. Just the way the architecture of these older temples all comes together and just how unique the gardens are. It's just something that I've always loved. Around here there is also a very large gate known as Nanzenji Samon Gate. Now because of how low the battery was on my phone, I wasn't really able to film much of the gate, unfortunately. It was getting quite late by the time we got there as well, so unfortunately we weren't able to go inside the gate. But you can actually go all the way up to the top where you can get quite a good view apparently. So hopefully next time we come back we might be able to do that. But unfortunately this time we did get there just a little bit too late. Now in Nanzanji Suirokaku, there's another place called the Waterway Bridge, which was built during the Meiji period in the late 1800s as part of the Nanzenji Temple complex. Now this particular waterway bridge is not just a bridge, it's also an aqueduct that channels water through to Kyoto. With the brick arches and the stone pillars, it's an amazing blend of Western and Japanese architectural styles, and it was constructed to transport water from Lake Biwa to Kyoto. And I believe the actual hike in Kyoto starts in Lake Biwa and heads all the way around. The friend that we met up with actually mentioned the total hike is roughly like 70 kilometers or something like that. Which is just crazy. One day we will hopefully get around to doing it, but it's definitely something that's going to need to start very early in the morning in order to try and finish it. I mean, just today it was quite a big day. We did do a lot of walking, but even with everything that we did and everything that we saw, in total we only walked about 12 kilometers, which was still pretty far, but it's definitely quite far off being 70, so maybe next time. So because it was getting late at this point, we started heading back. So we dropped our friend off at the train station because he actually lives back in Osaka. So he's going to travel back there. And it was around this time that we would start driving on to Fukui, which is a city in countryside Japan. Now, because it was quite a drive to get to Fukui, we decided to stop early to just get dinner at like a roadside stop, which there's quite a lot of in Japan. And the food at these stops is actually quite good. What I got from this particular one was this ramen with some chicken karaage on the side, which is just fried chicken and some rice and kimchi. And this is pretty much it for the day. The rest of it was just spent driving on to Fukui. Now, it really would mean a lot to me if you could like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for future video updates. It really would go a long way in supporting me. But what would mean even more than that is if you could go to the description in this video and have a look at the GoFundMe page to help support my sister and her family with this battle that they're currently going through. Any amount that you could potentially donate to her and her family, it really would mean the world. Just any little bit helps at this stage with everything they're going through. So yeah, I'm gonna end this video here. Thank you all for watching. It really does mean a lot, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.